He says, verse 10 now of 2 Thessalonians 3, "For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat." And I love that. A believer who is looking for the Lord to come is not a dreamer. He's a worker. No work, no food is the rule laid down by the apostle. How absurd certain ones can be. I remember a man that had been the dean of men at Moody Bible Institute. This was years ago, probably 50 years ago. He told me this, and he told this to me at least 25 years ago. He said that when he was a young man, he'd been dean there, and there were two young men that roomed together. They were this type of hyper saints, very sanctified, and they didn't come down for the morning breakfast, and they didn't come down to the dining room for lunch, and they didn't come down to the dining room for the evening meal. So this man decided, the dean of men, he'd go up and see what was the matter. So he went up, and they were just sitting in the room looking out into space. He asked them, were they sick? And they said, no, they weren't sick. He said, why haven't you come down to the meals? They said, we are now trusting the Lord for everything, and we are waiting for him to tell us whether we should go down and eat. Well, he said, are you hungry? And they said, yes, we're hungry. Well, he said, don't you imagine that that's one of the ways the Lord has of letting you know that you ought to go down and eat? No, we're waiting for special revelation from it, and we are not going to move until then. Well, he says, I have news for you. You're going to move, but not down to the dining room. You're going to move out. We're going to get rid of you. And they got rid of him. The interesting thing is that today you can be a fanatic, friends, especially in the area of prophecy. And it's quite interesting that Paul has spent as much time, more than a chapter here, almost half of this epistle. Fact of the matter is, he has spent half of this epistle on that which is practical. That is the great emphasis today. It's one thing today, friends, to hold the truth of the coming of Christ for his church. It's another thing to get that meshed in and geared in to our living down here, to where it becomes practical. And that means working, you see. And it is that which should engage the attention of all of us. I always think of the story, it's a rather familiar story, of the man who was a gardener, and I think it had a much higher title than that, of a large estate in Italy, in northern Italy. There was a castle there, and a visitor was there one day, and he was shown around the grounds. Everything was immaculate and just beautiful, and he never saw gardens so lovely. And he had lunch there, and the gardener was there and his wife, and he commended him for it. And the gardener, of course, thanked him for it. And he said, by the way, he says, why do you have this? Well, he says, I'm expecting the owner to come. Well, he says, that's wonderful. But he says, when was he here the last time? Well, he says, it was about 10 years ago. He said, you mean the owner hasn't been here in 10 years? He said, yes. He says, well, are you expecting him then? He said, yes. He says, are you expecting him probably next week? He said, oh, no, I'm expecting him today. But he didn't come that day. But you see, the man was living in the light of the coming of the owner. And that meant that he did what? He kept busy. He wasn't down at the gate looking through the pickets to see if the owner was coming. He was up there in that garden trimming and cutting and mowing and weeding and planting. That's the thing he was doing. He was busy. And that is what Paul's talking about here, is that we should be established in the work of the Lord in view of the fact that he is coming. And I can't think of anything more practical than this. Verse 10, for even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. You see, they had a few fanatics there. Some of these fellas, they just withdrew themselves, and they're not going to do anything. They're going to look for the Lord to come. Well, Paul says, then don't feed them. They got to go to work.